Most people say they don't care about status. But watch what happens when someone else gets promoted, when a friend suddenly becomes successful, when a post gets more likes than yours, when someone is praised in a room full of people. Something moves inside us. Sometimes it's admiration, sometimes it's motivation, and sometimes it's something much darker: jealousy, resentment. The strange feeling that somehow their success has become your problem. It's easy to think this obsession with status is a modern invention, a product of social media, a product of luxury brands, a product of celebrities and influencers. But status existed long before any of those things, long before cities, long before money, long before history itself. In fact, for most of human existence, status wasn't about looking important. It was about staying alive. And once you understand that, a lot of modern behavior suddenly starts making sense. Imagine living 40,000 years ago. No governments, no police, no supermarkets, no hospitals, just a small tribe surrounded by forests, predators, disease, and uncertainty. Everyday survival depended on other people. You needed hunters, you needed allies, you needed protection, you needed someone willing to share food when your luck ran out. Being accepted by the group wasn't nice. It was necessary. Now here's the important part. Not everyone inside the tribe was treated the same. Some people had more influence, some were trusted more, some received more resources, some had first access to food, mates, shelter, and protection. In other words, some people had status. And status came with advantages that could mean the difference between life and death. Imagine two hunters. One is respected, the other is ignored. A harsh winter arrives. Food becomes scarce. The respected hunter receives help. The ignored hunter may not. One survives, the other doesn't. Status wasn't just social decoration. It was survival insurance. Think about that for a second. Today, losing status might mean feeling embarrassed at work. Back then, losing status could mean losing your future. Over thousands of generations, the human brain adapted to this reality. Natural selection didn't reward people who ignored social standing. It rewarded people who paid attention to it, people who noticed shifts in hierarchy, people who cared about reputation, people who understood where they stood inside the group. Because those individuals often survived long enough to pass their genes on. And that's where things start getting interesting. Because the brain doesn't always know the difference between ancient threats and modern ones. The world changed. The instincts stayed. Your ancestors worried about tribal status. You worry about followers. Your ancestors worried about reputation around the campfire. You worry about reputation online, different environment, same brain. This sounds fake, but some studies suggest social rejection activates many of the same brain regions involved in physical pain. In other words, being excluded doesn't just feel bad. Your brain partially treats it like an actual threat. That reaction makes much more sense when you remember our evolutionary history. For ancient humans, exclusion wasn't simply emotional, it was dangerous. A person alone faced predators alone, hunted alone, starved alone, died alone. The fear of losing social standing became deeply wired into human psychology, and that's why status affects us in ways we rarely notice. Consider how much of modern life revolves around signaling. The car you drive, the clothes you wear, the neighborhood you live in, the job title on your profile, the photos you post, the stories you tell. Many of these things aren't just practical. They're signals, messages sent to other humans, messages that say, look at me, notice me, value me, respect me. Anthropologists have found evidence of status displays across countless cultures. The symbols change, the behavior remains. One tribe might use elaborate jewelry, another might use rare feathers, a modern society might use luxury watches. But underneath it all is the same ancient desire, recognition, because recognition once carried real survival value. But then something strange happened. Human societies became larger, much larger. A prehistoric tribe might contain a few dozen people. Today, we are surrounded by thousands, sometimes millions. And suddenly our ancient status systems found themselves operating in an environment they were never designed for. Social media is perhaps the clearest example. For most of human history, status existed inside small groups. Now it exists on a global stage. A teenager can compare themselves to celebrities, athletes, billionaires, influencers, people they will never meet. The brain was built to compare itself to a tribe, not the entire world. And yet that's exactly what it does, every day. This may explain why status anxiety has become so common. There is always someone richer, smarter, more attractive, more successful, more famous. The comparison never ends. Ancient humans didn't wake up and compare themselves to 10 million people before breakfast. We do, and our brains often struggle with the consequences. But status isn't entirely negative. In fact, status helped build civilization. People seek achievement partly because achievement earns respect. Scientists pursue discoveries. Artists create masterpieces. Athletes push their limits. Inventors solve problems. Status motivates effort. Effort drives progress. The same instinct that creates jealousy can also create innovation. That's the paradox. One of humanity's greatest strengths and greatest frustrations comes from the same source, the desire to matter. Now imagine an ancient camp at night. The fire crackles. Children sleep nearby. The tribe gathers together after a long day. Stories are shared. Food is divided. Decisions are made. Among the group sits a respected elder, not because they are the strongest, not because they are the richest, because they have earned trust. Their status exists because other people value what they contribute, and that reveals something important. The highest forms of status were rarely about possessions. They were often about usefulness. Wisdom, skill, generosity, reliability, traits that benefited the group. Somewhere along the way, many people began confusing status with visibility. But they are not the same thing. Being noticed is easy. Being respected is harder. Ancient humans understood this better than we sometimes do. The tribe remembered who could solve problems, who could protect others, who could be trusted when things became difficult. Those people earned status that lasted, and maybe that's the lesson hidden inside our obsession. Because deep down, most people aren't chasing money, or followers, or fame, at least not entirely. They're chasing something older, something their ancestors chased around campfires thousands of years ago. The feeling of being valued, the feeling that they matter to the people around them, the feeling that their existence has meaning inside a group. Tonight, as you scroll through social media, check your notifications, or compare yourself to someone else, remember this: part of your mind is still living in a world of small tribes and ancient fires, a world where status could determine survival, a world your ancestors knew intimately. And maybe the goal isn't to stop caring about status. Maybe that's impossible. Maybe the real challenge is deciding which kind of status is actually worth pursuing. Because long after the likes disappear, the trends fade and the attention moves on, one question remains. Not how many people noticed you, but whether your presence genuinely mattered. And that is the same question humans have been trying to answer for tens of thousands of years.